Hi, welcome to my class, Cross-Cultural Understanding, with me, Andreas Yulianto from Jakarta International University, Indonesia. Today is the fifth meeting, and we are going to discuss language and nonverbal communications. We have talked a lot about language and also communications. Right now, we are going to discuss the language in relations to nonverbal communications. Let me tell you the learning objectives of this class. By the end of this chapter, everybody who is watching this video is expected to be able to, first, define nonverbal communications. Second, describe the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communications. The third one, identify the characteristics and functions of nonverbal communications. Fourth, identify different types of nonverbal codes. Fifth, explains the influence of culture on nonverbal communications. Sixth, discuss the relationship between nonverbal communications and power. And the last, explains how nonverbal communications can be a barrier in intercultural interactions. We'll begin with the perspective about the nonverbal communications. In these sessions, we'll discuss the characteristics and functions of the nonverbal communications and some other things. With the idea learning to communicate effectively and appropriately in intercultural interactions requires the knowledge of both verbal and nonverbal. Just as verbal behaviors, like the use of language and the linguistic norms of politeness, nonverbal communications also is influenced by the cultural socializations process. Many of our nonverbal actions, such as the gesture, volume of speech, the intonations, are affected by our linguistic and cultural background. In these sessions, we try to investigate the nature and the importance of nonverbal communications, and also we try to examine the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communications. Yeah, let's begin our discussions with the characteristics and functions of nonverbal communications. The nature and the importance of nonverbal communications. Matsumoto and Huan, 2012 here, try to clarify or give us the idea about the nonverbal communications. That is, no discussions of communications is complete without the inclusions of nonverbal behaviors. In discussions of the communications, of course, it is incomplete when we do not discuss the nonverbal behavior. Why? Yeah, because nonverbal behavior is the communications, and communications sometimes are in the form of nonverbal behavior. In our discussions today, we'll talk the terms of nonverbal communications and nonverbal behavior. And of course, it is a bit confusing for us. But then we will use these two terms in our discussions in today's sessions. And to prevent the misunderstanding, then first, we try to review the definitions of nonverbal communications and nonverbal behaviors. Let's begin to look at how nonverbal communication is conceptualized. Here, Liu et al. Explains the nonverbal communications. Here, it is about communications without using words or the use of non-spoken symbols to communicate a message. Yeah, just like verbal communications, like language or cultures. There are multiple definitions of nonverbal communications. This is the first. And the second one, by Hickson et al. 2004. Here, nonverbal communications that the aspects of the communications process that deals with the transmissions and receptions of messages that are not a part of the natural language systems. Any aspects of communications that does not include words is considered part of the nonverbal code. If we look at these two definitions, both of the experts here, they are actually have the same ideas. Both show the basic concept of nonverbal communications, where this communications does not use any form of verbal languages. Well, the nonverbal communications often occurs through the interactions of the speaker, similar to the communications activities using the verbal language. We have to have certain or some components or some rules such as the speaker, receiver, and context. Here, nonverbal communications, it is occurred through the interactions of the speakers. Using what? Using their dress, using the voice, using the distance maintained, and also the receiver to give the feedback or to respond the messages transmitted from the speakers. They can use the posture, facial expressions like smile, or and many more. And also maybe you can have the distance, a certain distance from the speakers. Let's say when we are not comfortable with the conversation, so like we try to avoid the eye contact or even like make a certain distance. And also we need the situations. Here the social context or the environment and time of the interactions can be the situations. And of course it influences the communications. Yeah. People who are behaving are not necessarily communicating. Wow. Then what is actually nonverbal behavior? And here is the answers. Hickson explains that people who are behaving are not necessarily communicating. So sometimes even we move or we make a movement of our body or our things, sometimes it is not communications. We don't have any intentions to communicate or let's say to share our ideas about something. 93% of meaning is conveyed through nonverbal communication channels, like the movements, facial expressions, vocal qualities. Yeah. More recently, there are a lot of debate about this claim. Researchers have suggested that this figure or this calculations is an overestimation. But then most agree that a significant amount of our communication is nonverbal. Nothing that nonverbal acts are a better indicators of the true meaning than actual words. Nonverbal communications, is the single most powerful form of communications. Many nonverbal acts are innate, where it exists um, from the birth, and also it is it is universal. That is, people in different cultures, they can share or they can learn uh, certain understanding, certain perspective about a particular case. Other elements and dimensions of nonverbal communications vary depending on the cultural context. Considering the significance of the nonverbal codes, bodily movement, use of space and time, clothing and adornments, and sound other than words. Yeah. Intercultural communication studies are, of course, very important and required in a variety of contexts that consider nonverbal acts, both alone and in connections with the verbal communications. Now, let's try to analyze the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communications. Verbal communications includes sounds, words, speaking, and language. Yeah. When individuals interact face to face, their communications may consist of verbal and non-verbal components too. In the transmissions of messages, non-verbal codes often interact with the verbal codes. For example, gestures and facial expressions may accompany certain words and language. Yeah. And of course, it is with regards to such aspects such as accent, rate, tone, and volume of speech, yeah, and all of which are considered nonverbal features. Both verbal and nonverbal codes may communicate meaning together or separately. Hickson's et al. 2004. Nonverbal communication is complex because it creates communications by use of nonverbal behavior, either by themselves or combined with words. It may be shared between people interpersonally or within a person intrapersonally. It may be intentional or it can be unintentional. It may also be used without words, or it may take on meaning only when it is used in combinations with words. Yeah, just as different societies and cultures may have different languages or dialects, some of their non-verbal codes and norms of behavior, such as such kind of accepted patterns or rules, it is also vary across cultures and differs depending on the context and situations. And of course, during the primary socialization process, children develop the ability to appropriately use and interpret verbal and non-verbal cues in a particular cultural context. During the primary socialization process, children develop the ability to appropriately use and interpret verbal and non-verbal cues. As they mature, they acquire the first language, and then they learn the meaning of words and certain expressions along with the rules of verbal communications. Over time, children also become more aware of the multiple forms of nonverbal cues and learn the norms for nonverbal behavior. In contrast with language learning, most of the learning of nonverbal cues is implicit. Is implicit. While children may learn some grammar rules and vocabulary through formal language educations, they learn how to use and interpret nearly all nonverbal cues by observing and even imitating. Right? Most verbal communications carries with it a great amount of intent, but non-verbal communications tend to be more primitive and less controllable than its verbal counterpart. Well, as people are taught to have less control over their nonverbal actions, adults generally consider that the nonverbal messages to be more truthful and accurate. Children, however, typically rely on the verbal expressions for the meaning, as they have not yet developed the ability to interpret the nonverbal acts and read between the lines. With less awareness of the nonverbal cues, young children tend to depend on the literal meaning and are generally more trusting of the verbal message. Now let's move to the functions of the nonverbal communications. Wow, nonverbal communications can serve a number of functions. While many messages are conveyed nonverbally without the awareness of the senders, in other situations like nonverbal messages are intentional and purposeful. Individual can choose to send nonverbal messages in many different forms, in order to convey specific meanings in range of the situations. And some nonverbal functions are associated with verbal forms of communications, both or either oral or written, while other do not involve words. And to communicate effectively, whether it in intercultural interactions or intercultural situations, it is helpful to be aware of the various functions of nonverbal communications. Here is the functions of the nonverbal communications. The first is the self-presentations. We disclose information about ourselves through our physical appearance, our tone of voice, our posture, our mode of dress, and adornment, like body piercings, tattoos, makeup. And also we reveal personal dimensions of ourselves, our personality, degree of openness, values, through our use of time, body odor, use of space, the ways we decorate our homes or dorm rooms, and many other nonverbal means. Jackson 2000. We routinely use nonverbal signals to let other people know who we are. And we also convey aspects of our identities and personalities through nonverbal means. And at times, our nonverbal behavior is intentionally designed to manage the impressions that others have of us. Look at this one. The case. I remember the first time I went abroad in a country that I cannot mention. I have failed to understand the customs of the people there. One time I entered the classroom while waiting for my teacher to come in. Not long after, a female figure entered the classroom with simple clothes and tend to be dull. I'm like, I don't care. In short, I realized that she is my lecturer. What's happening here? What is his impressions? For the first time, uh, probably it is the first time for him to come and join in that class. Yeah, the impressions determines your idea, your point of view, even your judgment about your communications part. Yeah. The other, what is that? Reasons, the other uh, functions of nonverbal communications is conveying relationship messages. Through nonverbal means, we indicate our relationship with others, whether we realize it or not. Jackson's 2014. We demonstrate how well we know or feel about someone through our facial expressions, like smile, frown, raise eyebrows, or even speech qualities. Let's say loud voice, aggressive tone, and also how closely we stand or sit by him or her, and so on. Yeah. Um, for example, here, in some cultural setting, we may walk warm in arm with a romantic partner, and when sitting, we may lean forward and frequently touch each other as we chat. Yeah, we may also convey the intimacy by using, let's say, a soft tone when we are talking or soft voice. And sometimes we can also do like whispering to each other, like these pictures. We may convey many things through our behavior, through our movement, like even our, let's say, dislike or lack of interest in other people. Yeah. We can also show this, such as, let's say, by uh, avoiding eye contact or even folding our arms, leaning away from him or her when talking, and keeping a large physical distance between us when standing are dislike or lack of interest in another person. Yeah, there are a lot of ways that can be presented through our behavior, even like in work situations. Nonverbal communications can also indicate and reinforce the power uh, dimensions in the relationships. For example, here in a work situations, an employer may stand farther away from her employees, and sometimes to emphasize the authority, she may also talk in a louder, more assertive voice, yeah, and so on and so forth. At a formal banquet in mainland China, the attendees may gather at round table and sit in assigned places according to their status. Oh, wow. The guest with the, let's say, highest rank is usually positioned to the right of the host and is the first person to be offered serving from the communal disease, yeah, and so on. And of course, sometimes the guest with the highest position is usually seated next to the, yeah, let's say in a very spatial or very and has got very good treatment compared to other. Yeah. And here, look at the case study. At the wedding party, I saw a lot of invited guests arriving and queuing to enter. At the far end near the host, I saw an empty sofa. When I approached it, I saw that this was only seat that said VIP. Oh wow. Even the sofa is already reserved for certain people who have probably high rank in society. Yeah. Replacing verbal messages, also the functions of the non-verbal communications. Non-verbal messages can also be used as a substitute for the verbal messages. How? For example, instead of verbally telling students to be quiet, a primary or a teacher may simply just hold a finger to her lips. As long as the students understand this gesture, of course, these simple actions may be quite effective than just like saying loudly, silent, keep silent, stop. In some situations, using words to communicate may simply not be viable options. When, let's say, conducting a concert, musical concert, for example, conductor or let's say, the conductor, using words to communicate, using such gestures to communicate. Let's say just like hand movement. Of course, it is to convey message to a large number of musicians. Imagine if you are using your voice or you talk loudly with a very crowd and noisy place. Of course, it is impossible. Yeah. And electronic communications, let's say Facebook and instant messages, web forums, it is now common to insert emoticons in your WhatsApp, for example, or your Kakao or other social media. When you are telling your feelings like you are sad or you are happy, then you just choose which emoticons are appropriate. Like this three pictures in front. It represents a lot, of course. And the other functions of the nonverbal communications is repeating verbal messages. For example, if a visitor asks you where the cafeteria is, you may say that it is next to the campus bookstore while using your finger or arm to point in that directions. So sometimes your, let's say your verbal communication skill is not quite good enough. So I think your verbal communications will be very helpful for you to describe, to show the directions. When you use a second language that you are not really fluent in, you may frequently use gestures to accompany your words, especially if you lack confidence in your oral skills. And of course, it will be useful or meaningful using the verbal, non-verbal communications. The functions of the non-verbal communications is also to emphasize the verbal messages. Non-verbal messages may be used to emphasize the emotions or depth of feeling that lie behind the words we are speaking. Like a forward brow can convey a concern. You verbally tell a friend that you are sorry that her pet has died. A look of surprise by using like a wide eyes, raised eyebrow, of course, can emphasize your shock when you exclaim that you cannot believe that one of your friends is getting married to someone she has dated for only 3 weeks, right? Of course, like in this case study, also will give us a clear opinion about this one. My gaze on my way to school was distracted by a group of people standing on the side of the road. Neither of them looked sad. Everyone was standing and some were jumping and dancing, some laughing, smiling happily. I don't know what happened, but the romantic music, the beautiful decorations, the beautiful and colorful clothes, it says pretty much everything. Yeah. So these all represent a lot of meanings, right? Even you don't need to ask questions, what is happening? But you can see from their face, from their clothes, from their situations, from their actions. And the other thing is that nonverbal behavior functions as reliant outward messages. Ideas or messages that are difficult or awkward to express verbally may sometimes be communicated more easily and effectively through nonverbal means. Suppose that when someone has died, it is not easy to find the right words to say to a loved one. Instead of words, sympathy and solidarity can be conveyed through the facial expressions or a gentle touch on the arm, or simply by being present in the room. When someone has died, of course, we need to do something, but sometimes they don't need any words, but they need sometimes is the touch. In other scenario, nonverbal channels can also be used to avoid the awkward verbal encounters. Like when you find someone you don't want to talk to, instead of giving long verbal excuses, then you just keep going slowly and show that you are in hurry to get somewhere. You can tap your watch, shrug, or raise your hand in the air to indicate that the situation is not in your control. Smile, or even without exchanging a word. There are a lot of things that can be presented using the non-verbal communications. It is also for regulating interactions. Yeah. The term regulators here to refer to actions which maintains and regulate the back and forth natures of speaking and listening between two or more interactors. They tell the speakers to continue, repeat, elaborate, hurry up, become more interesting, less salacious, give the other a chance to talk, etc. They tell the listener to pay special attention, to wait just a minute more or to talk. Ekman and Friesens, 1960. Through nonverbal actions like the hand gestures, head nods, gaze, and other body movement, we can tell others to do or not to do something. We can give a young children, let's say, a stern look when we wish them to stop poking each other, while we are talking with them, right? And yeah, and like directing the turn taking is another common form of the nonverbal communication in interactions. In a small group discussions, you may use a hand gesture to signal that you are giving the floor to someone else. Yeah. You can non-verbally indicate you wish to speak by leaning forward or touching the arm of the person who is talking. Yeah, and so on. There are a lot of things that you can do. And also displaying the emotions. Emotional display refers to the expressions of our emotions. Jackson's 2014 give us examples. If we are bored in a lecture, we may yawn frequently and our shoulders may slump. Nonverbal communications may also reveal our emotions, attitudes, and mental state. And when we are very familiar with people and their habits, we may ascertain their state of mind simply by observing their nonverbal behavior. Words are often not needed to know. Yeah, when a friend is like depressed, stressful, sad, or worried, even if she says she is fine, we may rely more on nonverbal messages to gauge her mood. The better we know someone and the cultural context, the more likely we are to accurately interpret his or her affective state. This awareness then help us to respond appropriately. Yeah, emotions are expressed in multiple channels, including face uh, and voice, and through words, prosody, and the grammatical devices, touch and body language, such as posture, that may also disclose our affective state. Kalner and Ekman describe the emotions itself. Yeah, the display of the emotions such as disgust, fear, and pride, shame can of course vary in different cultural settings. And this can be confusing, of course, for the newcomers as we naturally look for clues about how people feel about us and our relationship. Yeah. We know the ritual. Ritual is also uh, a set of actions of rites performed for symbolic meaning that include nonverbal actions. All cultures have rituals. It is common for nonverbal acts to feature in demonstrations or patriotism by saluting the flag, for example, or even the national holidays, public ceremonies, religious activities like praying, worshiping, or baptism, yeah, and even the wedding. Over time, specific actions become routinized and passed from one generation to another through enculturations, of course. Even the ways people greet each other often involve nonverbal codes, and this may vary from one cultural setting to another, like this one. Way is the traditional greeting in Thailand. And in other countries, in other cultures, I might have different ways. Here, they use the consists of the slide bow with the palms pressed together in a prayer-like fashions. The higher the hands are held in relation to the face, and the lower the bow, the more respect or the reverence the giver of the way on the greetings. This salutation is traditional use when formally entering and leaving a house. The way here may also be used to convey gratitude or even to apologize. Culture and types of nonverbal communications. There are some types of nonverbal communications. Para-language, or as it is called, vocalisk, kinesics, or body language, oculesics, eye contact or movement, proxemics, social distance, haptics, touch, olfactics, smell, physical appearance and artifacts, chronomics, and it's also time, the Jackson's 2014. Well, let us begin our first types of nonverbal communications by discussing about the paralanguage. Paralanguage varies across culture. It deals with the vocal qualifiers, the vocal qualities consist of harsh voice, a tense voice, a whispery voice, a breathy voice, a raspy voice, and so on and so on. And also the vocal cues is the non-phonemic qualities of the language that convey meaning in the verbal communications. And also vocal characterizer, including retching, crying, gasping, grunting, laughing, sighing, yawning, so on and so on. Those about the paralanguage. Paralanguage varies across cultures. Now let us learn from this case study. Nathan Lee is a Korean student who visited Indonesia country for several days. One day, he met an Indonesian, let's say a Batak tribe, one of the tribes in Indonesia, who is talking to someone over his phone. He's literally wondered why the guy speaks loudly, and then he asked to the guy. The guy said that he just talked normally to his dog. Then Nathan Lee was shocked because he thought that he was angry, but it turned out that not at all. Yeah, that's very true that paralanguage varies across cultures. Sometimes it is normal in a particular culture to speak loudly, but sometimes in other cultures, in other countries, it is not, like in this case, right? And the 8 attributes of sound to contribute the vocalic meaning associated with speech by Hickson et al. 2000. The first is about the loudness, where it refers to the degree of intensity of the voice, and the pitch is the range of one's voice during conversation and is linked to the frequency of the sound. Durations, how long a particular sound is made, vocal characteristics, the degree of raspiness, harshness of the speaker's voice, or even the articulations. It refers to the clarity and control of the sounds being produced. Pronunciations is concerned with the clarity and control of the sound being produced, the rhythm and the rate of speech. Silence refers to the absence of sound, both positive and negative. At its can be expressed through silence. Now we move to the kinesics. Yeah. Kinesics also includes communications through the use of smiling, frowning, giggling, and so on. And these nonverbal cues may differ among and within cultures. Around the world, a smile usually signals happiness. However, in some cultural contexts, it can also mask of the sadness or be used to conquer embarrassment. Yeah. In some countries like Japan or other countries, people may smile or even laugh or giggle in situations they find awkward or overly personal. Yeah. Personal, let's say, embarrassed or about them when someone made a mistake, and they have made it at work when someone reveals that a close friend has just passed away. Let's say communications partner from other cultural background who are unfamiliar with this nonverbal behavior may mistakenly interpret, let's say, interpret the smile or the laugh. Yeah. Misunderstanding like this can negatively impact the intercultural relations. Kinesics is broad category of the nonverbal actions. The body language, eye-related movement, affect or affective displays, so on and so forth by Matsumoto. And gestures are the typically hand or facial movement that are used to illustrate speech and convey verbal meaning. Here, illustrators or let's say the shape or illustrate what is being said, pointing or outlining a picture of a reference. Emblems, direct replacements for words. Okay, signals in the US, for example. Affect displays convey the intensity of an emotions. Frown, dropping one's shoulders to signify sadness or empathy. Regulators for controlling the flow of the conversations and hand gestures, head nods. Adapters use unintentionally to relieve tensions. Scratching, smoking by Ekman, Reasons, 1969. Speech illustrators. Here the gestures or movement that are directly linked to speech, that is, they illustrate or emphasize the verbal message, even though the user may not be conscious of their use. Yeah. Cultural, let's say, differences are the evidence in the amount, the type, and the frequency of the illustrative gestures. And here, sometimes we do not recognize certain gestures or movement because, like, we are not really familiar with that. But some gestures or movement, it is a link to the speech, and it is used to emphasize the verbal message. In Latin and Northern Africa cultures, for example, large illustrative gestures often accompany speech. that is, individuals in this cultural setting tend to highly expressive in their gesticulations. In contrast, from an early age, children in East Asian cultures are discouraged from using such gestures in public. So then they tend to be relatively less expressive in their use gestures. The differences, these cultural differences, of course, show the amount, the type, the frequency of the illustrative gestures that are used in different parts of the world. Of course, there are variations within culture and differences, and depending on the context and situations. Emblems or emblematic gestures are used to convey messages without speech. Every culture has emblematic gestures, which are associated with particular words or phrase. Examples of emblems like these pictures in front. Had too much to drink in France, anger in Japan, come here in Japan. In different countries, probably they have different meaning for these gestures, right? Let's say the sign of okay, yeah, and once we have the thumb up and hand in fist, for example, which these are generally understood by people who have been socialized in the US and Canada as the what is that? The symbols of okay, but in other countries probably it is different. Can be sometimes in other countries like insulting or other particular impolite actions. Yeah. Since emblems are culture specific, their meanings often vary in different cultural settings. And gesture, that is the positive, is one context may be deemed offensive in another. Like the symbol okay as a tool. In other countries, probably it is sexual implications in many parts, like Europe and other countries, probably. And this also the other emblems. Come here, money, no. How money representations here in Japan and in US is different, right? Yeah. And also the facial expressions and emotional display for the happy, disgust, fear, surprise. Of course, probably different country, different cultures have different interpretations of these pictures. And oculesics. Here it talks about the eye behaviors. The oculesics here is an element of the communications using the eye contact, dynamic eye movement, pupil dilations, gaze directions, and intensity. Is this oculesic? Of course, it is determined, it is influenced by the cultural settings. Certain eye contact is considered as respectful or appreciated to particular speakers, but sometimes direct eye contact also impolite, right? So that's why culture plays a significant role in determining these all meanings, these all nonverbal behaviors. Proximics, Yeah. For levels of the interpersonal space used in the United States, which vary depending on the type of social relationship involved, by Hall, 1956. Yeah. Um, Intimate, personal, and social, and public space, they have certain distances. They have certain spatial zones. Yeah, like the intimate space reserved for the private situations with people who are emotionally close to us. So the distance is between 0 to 18 inches. And then for the personal space, here, the personal space is the informal distance for close friends, colleagues, and some acquaintances. It is around 18 inches to 4 feet. And social space, this is the formal distance between acquaintance and the social functions such as the party, the concert, and so on. It is 4 till 12 feet. And the public space, this is less personal contact. Yeah, it is the very far in the space. It is beyond the 12. Yeah, it is a public situations. And haptics, touch is considered under this haptics. Touch can send multiple messages, many of which are affective or emotional in nature. Touch can also be used to provide support or encouragement, display the intimacy, signal the approval, or alternatively convey dislike, distrust, and rejections by using the touch. Touching behaviors may also change over time due to the exposure to other norms of touching, like the observations of the first-hand experience with other cultures norms in the multicultural place and the mass media. This this can contribute to change the touching because of the intercultural communications. And olfactics, here also known as olfactions, is the study of how we use and perceive odors, perfumes, spices, bodies, and deodorant. There are also cultural differences related to the olfactics. Smell can be used to communicate positions and social class and also power. And this varies according to the cultural context. Smell in some cultures is also used to categorize people into the social group with a different status. Yeah. Because there are meanings or statuses associated with certain skins. In some cultures or nations, wearing an expensive perfume can also signal the status and the wealth. Yeah. Hence, similar to the nonverbal codes, all olfactics can impact on the intercultural communications and one's willingness to engage. Physical appearance and artifacts. Physical appearance is also considered a form of nonverbal communications among human beings, as well as physical features like the body type, the eye shape, the gender, the skin, the color. This triggers the segregations or exclusions, right? And some other artifacts such as decorative ornaments such as accessories, body piercing, brand names and logos, choice of color, clothes, grooming, hairstyle. so on and so forth. It can be the reasons of the categorizations. Yeah. And what about the chronomics? Chronomics is the study of how people use and structure time. The way that we perceive and value time, organize our time, and respond to the time impacts on the communications process. Time perceptions includes punctuality and willingness to wait. This may play a significant role in the nonverbal communications process. The use of time can affect one's lifestyles, daily routines, rate of speech movements, and so on and so on. Time can also be used to reinforce one's status. Yeah. For example, in most companies, the boss can interrupt the progress to hold an impromptu meeting in the middle of the workday. But the average worker would have to make an appointment to see the boss. The way different cultures perceive time can influence communication as well. Now we move to the nonverbal intercultural communicative competence. Studying nonverbal communications cannot ensure the competence in interpersonal communications. What does this mean? A more awareness of the dimensions of nonverbal behavior and the potential variations across and within cultures can help to enhance one's interactions with people who have been socialized in different cultural environments. Similar to the verbal codes, non-verbal acts vary among people from different cultural backgrounds. And these differences can sometimes lead to misunderstandings and conflict. Right. Making an effort to enhance one's nonverbal communications repertoire is vital for effective intercultural interactions. To become competent intercultural communicator, it is imperative to recognize the power and multiple dimensions of nonverbal communications in the interpersonal relations. One's nonverbal communication skill can improve with practice and ultimately strengthen the relationship with individuals who have been socialized in different cultural settings. Nonverbal communications, nonverbal intercultural communicative competence is not a guarantee people able to interpret the meaning behind of all nonverbal behaviors. Sometimes it is still quite easy to interpret other things that is very different from us. Even like the way we smile, the way we note, the way we shake the hands. Some people may recognize something different from us. And of course, it is because of the interference of the cultural background. We are socialized differently from the other groups of people. And then how to solve these situations? If we just stop and just pretend everything is okay, then it will become worse. And it triggers the conflict. And we have to have And we have to enhance the intercultural communicative competence itself to increase, to enhance our awareness of the differences. Right. We have come to the end of these sessions, and we have talked a lot with nonverbal communications. Now, can you define the nonverbal communications? Let's get back to our learning objectives. Can you try to describe the relationship between verbal and nonverbal communications? And right now, can you identify the characteristics and functions of nonverbal communications? Can you identify different types of nonverbal codes? And please explain the influence of culture and nonverbal communications. You may discuss the relationship between nonverbal communications and power with your partners. And also at the end, please explain how nonverbal communications can be a barrier in intercultural interactions. Yeah. I think that's it about our today's meeting. We'll still have a lot of discussions about cross-cultural understanding with different topics. And of course, it is interesting and challenging. We are very familiar with all of the differences. And we experience the conflict because of the intercultural relations. This course is to provide, is to equip us with the understanding and the awareness of all of the diversity in the world. That's it for today. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.